Trump administration just announced that the USDA will be freezing all funds to Minnesota. The USDA is what is used to pay for things like SNAP, WIC, our national school lunch program. We use the federal funds to provide universal breakfast and lunches to children here in Minnesota. The USDA provides grants for our farmers here in Minnesota. It supports local and small businesses. They are cutting a lifeline to Minnesota. And they've already cut the funds for childcare to Minnesota. This comes just days after Minnesota House GOP representatives went to Congress and testified that there is massive fraud in Minnesota and it's all Walz's fault. They are cutting off funds to the most vulnerable people in Minnesota. Our children will go hungry. Our families will not be able to afford roofs over their head because they can't have childcare. Our farmers will lose their farms.
So the Trump administration froze federal food assistance money to Minnesota. SNAP, food stamps, programs that literally feed people, children. And before anyone jumps in screaming, fraud, here's the part they don't want you to hear. This wasn't a court ruling. This wasn't proven wrongdoing. This was an executive freeze justified by allegations, not verdicts.
What's up, family? So we got to talk about this major move that just went down. And trust me, the Democrats are just heated over this one. Liberals losing their minds right now, and as you guys can see. Why? Because the Trump administration just said, nah, we're not sending out no more food stamp money, at least for now, to the state of Minnesota. Yep, that's a big deal. The Department of Agriculture, which handles things like food assistance, like SNAP, EBT cards, food stamps, they just put a pause on sending federal money to Minnesota. Why? Because of a fraud scandal so big, it's got the feds like, hold up. Y'all not going to keep scamming the American taxpayer like this. So I want to break this down real simple because this all ties back to the massive scandal involving Somali-run organizations in Minnesota. And before anybody tries to twist this into some racist angle, now this ain't about race. This is about corruption. Straight up, these organizations were supposedly running nonprofits like we're feeding the kids and helping the community. But when the Fed started digging, it turns out a whole bunch of money was going to not to help people, but into people's pockets. Offshore accounts, luxury items, you name it, millions of dollars. It's been called one of the biggest fraud cases in U.S. history when it comes to public funds. Not small change. So now, the Trump administration, who's been watching this mess unfold, they said, nah, pause that. We're not just going to keep blindly wiring millions to y'all when clearly y'all don't got this under control. And that's why the Department of Agriculture froze the funding. It's like if you kept giving your cousin money to pay rent and every time you pull up, he got a new flat screen and no lights on. At some point, you got to stop sending that money and start asking some questions, right? And here's the kicker. This ain't just about a few shady individuals. The governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, a Democrat, by the way, he's the one in charge of the state. And under his watch, this fraud didn't just happen, it exploded. Now, I'm not saying he personally ran off with the money, but what I'm saying is he let it slide. And when you're in charge and you let something this wild happen, that's on you. At best, it's gross negligence. At worst, you knew. And if you knew, then you were complicit. Now, this is where it gets deeper, right? Because you have Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. And before I get to that, I want you guys to check this out and then I'll break it down even more. Give this video a big thumbs up.
It makes me think back to the beginning of the administration. You had some very high-profile disagreements with Elon Musk, who was running Doge. Is the basic thesis of Doge been, more necessary than ever? And do you think there's a way to amplify that work moving forward?
Yeah, and Chris, to be clear, I was in 100% alignment with Elon on the waste, fraud, and abuse. It was just, the Silicon Valley motto is move fast and break things. I said my personal motto and the Treasury motto is move deliberately and fix things. And that's what you're going to see in our investigations. You're not going to see headlines tomorrow. You're not going to see them next week. But in a month, quarter, that once we get people in the bear trap, they're not getting out, because we will have conclusive evidence to present. And I think that they will have to make plea deals, that they will be willing to negotiate, to turn in higher ups, to help us map out how this happened. And again, we're going to take this Minnesota map to other 49 states.
But one curious detail, this interview was originally scheduled for the Minnesota State Capitol. Can you explain why that didn't come to pass and why we're here?
For one reason, Chris, Tim Walz is a coward. He is a coward. He would not guarantee that the Treasury Secretary of the United States of America would have police protection in the Minnesota State Capitol. He is afraid of what is coming. And he's not going to be able to hide behind this curtain, because we will get there. And I don't have to go in the Capitol building to investigate him. I would love for him to come to Treasury and answer some questions. I can guarantee you that he will be safe and sound then, depending on what we discover. I don't know about his future. And as I said earlier, that will be the only view of the Oval Office he ever gets, because let's just think about the long arc of history. The suppression of this story is this guy got to within could have been one heartbeat away from being president of the United States. And when we don't have a functioning mainstream media and great independent journalists like you, citizen journalists who go out and do the investigative work, because the people who are supposed to be doing it don't do it.
They need to hold these mainstream media outlets accountable some way, somehow. But I love it. I pray that they get to the rest of the 49 states, man, because it's needed to be done. It's long time overdue. And this is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He ain't just sitting back, man. He's saying the IRS is now involved, the Internal Revenue Service, that's federal tax crime level. And when they step in, it ain't no PR cleanup, baby. They coming for receipts. They investigating not just the fraud organizations, but possibly banks, money handlers, and even Tim Walz himself. Yes, the governor, you heard it. So for how he let all of this spiral, it makes sense, right? Under his watch when it comes to Governor Tim Walz. And you don't get federal investigations like this unless the fraud is massive and unless there's evidence that money moved through serious financial channels. So yeah, now we talking about financial institutions being looked into, and that's not small time. That's the type of heat that comes when the feds think this go deeper than a few shady actors. And I'm going to keep it a buck. It ain't just Tim Walz. It's a lot of Democrats. A lot. Not all, but a lot of them in power. And they turned a blind eye to this mess, and some of them benefited off of it or from it, because guess what? When that fraud money circulates, it doesn't just disappear. It gets donated. It buys influence. It props up local politicians. It creates loyalty. Why do you think these paid protesters be able to be on cue so fast when it comes to these headlines that the mainstream liberal media outlets be pushing? This propaganda nonsense, right? At the detriment of just telling the truth on the behalf out of respect for the American taxpayers. My thing is so disrespectful to sit there and say you're going to inform the American taxpayer of the truth in regards of you having a company, let alone a media outlet business that has been successful on the back of Americans, and you can't be truthful. And I'm talking to the MSNBC, now known as MS Now, which I call bullcrap now. I'm talking about the CNN. I'm talking about ABC. The list goes on and on, baby. So yeah, you got every reason to believe that this was more than just some random scammers doing dirt. It might have been part of a bigger machine, and now that machine is finally getting exposed. And honestly, every state should be investigated. You don't wait until it blows up like Minnesota. This kind of fraud happens when nobody's watching. And when people get comfortable thinking ain't nobody going to catch me. So if Minnesota's out here moving like this, what makes you think it's not happening in other states too? especially in states where federal aid is flowing like water. You need oversight, you need investigations, period. So bottom line, the Trump administration said, we're not funding a potential scam. The left is mad. They're saying it's racist, it's targeted, it's political, it's all that nonsense. But when you look at the facts, it's called accountability. And honestly, it's long overdue. But don't take my word for it. I want you guys to check it out.
Molly, the Trump administration says they want accountability in Minnesota, so they've taken a series of actions that they say will continue until there's proof that the alleged fraud has stopped. Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins is suspending nearly $129 million in USDA awards to the state of Minnesota and city of Minneapolis. She's highlighting the $250 million Feeding Our Future fraud scheme, which she says involved USDA funding. Rollins is now giving state and local leaders 30 days to hand her agency justification for the federal dollars the state spent from January 20th of last year to now. The Treasury Department is acting too. Secretary Scott Bessent says the agency is auditing financial institutions that help process funds in Minnesota. And it's also investigating 4 money services businesses in the state.
Our team at FinCEN has just provided formal notification to these businesses that they are under investigation.
But the administration is hitting a legal roadblock. Earlier this week, it froze $10 billion in federal aid for social services in 5 Democrat-led states, including Minnesota, California, and New York, over the concerns about fraud. A federal judge has blocked the move for now after state officials argued it could put vulnerable Americans in jeopardy.
If he doesn't happen to like blue states, I guess that's a personal preference for him. But what he can't do is use the law to punish people who just because he doesn't like them.
I'm going to stop that right there. And you guys hear this nonsense? So the heat is turning all the way up on Tim Walz. You had the governor of Minnesota. And the feds ain't playing no more. And they already moving on the state, and now they got their eyes locked directly on to Tim Walz. And honestly, hopefully, we actually see Tim Walz in handcuffs and actually held accountable, because we know that these Democrats don't get held accountable as much as they should. They always get a slap on the wrist or always get a pass. But if you're a regular American citizen, you get put over and not abide by the law, you get punished and held accountable and have your consequences to the fullest extent. I only think it's fair when it comes to these public officials, let alone local legislators and state legislators, right, that should be operating on behalf of American citizens. And when they're not, they should be held to the fullest extent of the law. So that is where it's looking like it's headed. And I think the odds of him getting formally charged going up by the day. Because let's be real, this ain't some little paperwork mistake. This is a multi-million-dollar fraud under his watch, Tim Walz. And ain't no way he did not know something. You don't get this level of fraud and just not know. Either he's lying or he's incompetent, and neither one is a good look. And matter of fact, I think that's exactly why he announced he ain't running for re-election. He's trying to get ahead of the story. That man ain't retiring. He's running. He's ducking the spotlight, because the deeper this thing goes, the more public starts connecting the dots. And he can't keep dodging it when the public start connecting the dots, and he can't explain it away. He can't explain it away. He can't gaslight his way through this. It's too messy, it's too obvious, and way too late. And let's be real, this whole thing makes the Democrat Party look bad, especially in blue states like Minnesota, where they had power for a while. This ain't just one bad apple. This fraud scandal, this money disappearing, this lack of oversight, it exposes a pattern. What do law enforcement and criminal officers, or I should say law enforcement officers, look for? Patterns, right? Stereotypes. You have to stereotype, because as you stereotype, you're able to see that the same pattern is symbol with the same criminal or the same crime activity taking place is obviously similar in a way. So then you could put apples with apples and oranges with oranges, because at the end of the day, it's a pattern. Behavioral pattern it happens, right? I'm gonna give you an example. That's like a woman, right, realizing that they man is cheating. Any other time, he's all chill. He comes at a certain time, home at a certain time, And now all of a sudden he's coming home later and later. He's hiding his phone, maybe got his phone under a pillow. Well, obviously, in the innate nature of a human, you're going to recognize pattern differences or pattern changes. And then obviously, she's looking at pattern recognition to realize, why is he acting this way? Right? Why is he being different all of a sudden? And that's obviously how things get exposed, and she'll catch him cheating or whatever he's doing that he wasn't supposed to be doing or wasn't doing before, and now all of a sudden doing it now, which is disrespectful to their union, let alone what they got going on, right? So when you look at it, there also are stereotype to my example of cheaters, right? They continue to be more secretive. They continue to pull back more. They continue to not be more them. They continue to be less of themselves or how they usually are. And it's constantly changing in regards of not only their patterns, but how they are approaching things because they're so busy being secretive and they're anxious, right? They don't want to get caught. So it's a stereotypical behavior, let alone pattern on top of it, to realize that she found her man cheating. So bringing all this together from my example, it shows and exposes the pattern, and it shows what happens when you get too comfortable in power and stop watching the people around you. And the Democrats know that, and which is why they're trying to distract us with all this side nonsense like protests and fake outrage, right? Like, look at the latest one, right? They got people out here rioting, making noise over the situation that Renee Good put herself into. You know, the one where they gave the woke woman a medal as if she was a martyr for putting herself in a position in the first place when she shouldn't have been blocking ICE officers or ICE operations, or ICE operation in this case specifically, even though she literally got in the way of law enforcement trying to do their job. Yeah, she obstructed an officer. And they acting like she's Rosa Parks or something, bro. Like, come on. That's not justice. That's just a distraction. That's a smoke screen. So we stop talking about real corruption like what's happening in Minnesota. And meanwhile, they trying to keep everybody emotional and distracted, and the Trump administration is still moving quietly but powerfully. And I love it. And like, they're not just freezing food stamps money now. They already froze childcare funds that Minnesota was getting from the feds. And now they coming after even more money. Agriculture funds. So stop acting like the Trump administration all of a sudden just froze something. They already froze the child care funds. Now they moving on to the agriculture funds, which includes a big chunk of food stamps and farming support. All of that on pause, and that millions of dollars being held back, and it's happening because of this fraud scandal. So now what we're seeing, what it looks like when the federal government actually says, yo, y'all not just gonna keep playing with taxpayer money, not on our watch. You defraud the system, you get hit. And Minnesota is learning that lesson the hard way. So you could say what you want. It ain't about hating blue cities. Because at the end of the day, if you want to be technical, I could pull up right now. You're not the only, it's not about blue cities. Because if you look at it, Ron DeSantis over there in Florida has ICE operations, but they are willingly working with ICE officers in the Trump administration. So they're in like that. They're in and out doing what they got to do, and there's no interruption, there's no chaos, and there's no agents of chaos over there in the state of Florida doing this nonsense, right? So I want you guys to see that this is not, stop trying to make it like, oh, Trump is attacking blue states, because that's not the case. That is not the case at all. Look, Florida enacted sweeping reforms to cartel legal abuse, stabilize insurance markets, and bring relief to consumers. Right? That's insurance. So they're making moves, working with the Trump administration to lower health insurance rate, health cares, right? Which the Democrats always talk about affordability, but they're not working with the administration to achieve or even see these results for their constituents, because it's all about power. It's not about the actual American citizen, their safety and national security and affordability. It's nonsense. And you look at it, it says in April 2025, Florida partnered with federal law enforcement in the largest immigration enforcement operation in ICE histories. Operation Tidal Wave. Today, I was proud to announce a new milestone in our joint efforts to combat illegal immigration and restore order in our communities. Florida law enforcement have arrested more than 10,400 illegal immigrants across the state. Florida leads again. And that was posted 12:45 p.m. by Governor Ron DeSantis. Shout out to him. The 5th of this new year, of the month, for the first month of this new year, January 5th, 2026, as you guys see below. So that is nonsense. It's not Trump coming after blue states. You guys just don't want to be exposed or held accountable for the fraud. And that's what it is.
The block is valid for 14 days to give both sides time to hand in more extensive legal arguments. Molly.
Madeline Rivera, thank you very much. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is calling this all an assault on his state.
We're exhausted as Americans, and this relentless assault on Minnesota, for whatever reason, is just cruel now. It has reached cruelness. So please, just give us a break. And if it's me, you're already getting what you want. But leave my people alone. Leave our state alone.
My next guest has no plan.
Well, there you have it. And look, let's stop pretending this is about feelings or bias, right? It's not that the Trump administration just woke up one day and decided to hate in Minnesota. It's not because they don't like Democrats. It's not personal. It's about the fraud, straight up. And when you're out here abusing federal money, don't act shocked when the feds step in and say, yeah, we're not doing this no more. And what blows my mind, what truly doesn't make any damn sense, is how the system is set up to let this happen. Think about this. The federal government gives money to the states. That's our tax money, money from your check, my check, everybody's check. And they say, all right, here's the deal. You can only use this money for specific things like food stamps, childcare, housing, stuff like that. Cool. But then the feds aren't even allowed to check up on how these states actually use the money. Like, how does that work? You telling me you're going to hand out billions of dollars, but you can't even say, yo, who's this money going to? Let us see the receipts. Make it make sense. I know family members, I know loved ones who elderly that are on Social Security, and they have to make sure they're showing receipts and proof every 6 months of renewal to make sure that they have receipts in regards to showing that they're actually getting the right, not only of Social Security monies, but they're not getting no extra monies, which then they're lying to Social Security because then they will have to make their adjustment on how much they would get paid monthly. And if they were lying and they get caught and they don't realize that the extra monies wasn't used for a reasonable cause like their health or medicine or something they needed under their disability, or just being an elder for their healthcare reasons, and they need some extra money and they only get paid Social Security once a month and it doesn't cover, if they can't find or justify within the Social Security department that it is justified for them to have that extra money, and that elderly person wasn't hiding it from them, if it wasn't justified, then that will be deducted out of their Social Security and they will be held accountable for that. But if it is justified, then it's okay. But it has to be justified based on the okay from the Social Security Administration. But you have to show the receipts of where the money is going if you're getting extra income, and you have to report that on a monthly basis. So if American citizens, to my example, have to report their incomes if they're getting these benefits, then what makes it any different from the states getting money from the federal government to make sure that it's going to the right place when they are getting benefits such as American taxpayer dollars they're benefiting from? Because it's not the state's money, it's not Governor Tim Walz money, it's not his own money. This is American taxpayer money. So states out here acting like, out here literally saying, no, we don't want to tell the federal government who's receiving the funds. Like, what? These are federal dollars, fam. And these states are out here with lawsuits fighting just to avoid accountability. And there are states literally suing their Trump administration, just like we seen today with the Attorney General of Minnesota now suing the Trump administration just so they don't have to show who's getting food stamps. Like, nah, you don't need to see that. Are you kidding me? What you mean the federal government don't need to see that when they cutting you the check? Where's the receipts? We don't need to see receipts out of respect for the American taxpayer. So how the hell is the federal government supposed to keep people accountable if they can't even see where the money is going? That's like giving your friend your debit card and they say, don't worry, I'll spend it on groceries, and then refusing to show you the receipt of it actually being paid towards groceries. That's the setup right now. And it's trash. The whole system is broken. It's just broken structurally from top to bottom, bottom to top. The welfare system in this country is a hot darn mess. And it's a hot darn mess like dirty laundry because it's all over the place. There's no structure with it. And it's not even because the idea of helping people is bad. Of course not. It's because there's no way to enforce the rules. It's broken by design. The feds have to jump through the hoops, do legal gymnastics, and still some woke judge somewhere over there going to swoop in and block any kind of oversight always. Every time the Trump administration tries to do anything about it, here comes a judge saying, nope, you can't do that. That's not fair. Man, forget fair. What about legal? What about fraud? And that's what I'm saying. Yeah, enough with these warnings, man. Enough with the back and forth. If you're the Trump administration, just freeze the funds. Just start with that. Stop giving these Democrats, warnings or heads up or whatever, because they're going to run to the judge anyway. It was only a matter of time. Minnesota is trying to use the Renee Good thing as in a way to where ICE is so running up on citizens in Minnesota, and they're causing so much destruction. They're agents of chaos, and we just want them out of our state. Well, they were there, obviously, to not only ensure national security and the safety for American taxpayers by getting the illegals out of there because they disrespected our country coming in here illegally in the first place, but also, Homeland Security was on the ground with Kristi Noem pointing them to look at this fraud and really investigate. And they don't want that. So now they want to take it to court and say, we want ICE out of here. We want the whole Trump administration out of here. We don't need none of this. Kristi Noem need to mind her business. No, she is doing the right thing. She needs to mind your business because apparently the state of Minnesota can't handle their business. Right? So it's mind blowing to me with this whole thing. And I'm going to get real bold. Let's just pause all the welfare spending, period. All federal assistance to these blue states if they don't want to give it over. Because clearly they mismanaging. That's why they don't want to give over the data to the Trump administration. They need to make a system where the data automatically electronically get reported to the federal government. Or they need to, I don't know what they need to do, but they need to do something where somebody is there to ensure the numbers is right and there's no biases politically. Because this is disrespectful and rude, and it's not fair to the American taxpayer who are taking taxpayer dollars, but then they want to talk about affordability, but then they keep taking money out of your check. This is the party of affordability, the Democrats, right? The only way to really fix this is to freeze the money, investigate, and hold people accountable. Otherwise, you're going to let the scam keep running. And that's what got us in this mess in the first place. So now I want to move on to this next clip with Ilhan Omar. I want you guys to check it out. Check it out.
Well, the administration also announced they're going to cut food stamps to Minnesota because they say some of the food stamp money had been embezzled here. Are you
and those are the things that are being litigated, and it is, again, unconstitutional for them to do so.
Are you confident that the fraud that has been discovered is no longer being conducted now? Is there any justification for saying this food stamp money is somehow being misused?
Yeah, there are ways to investigate fraud, which we have been doing in Minnesota, which the federal government has been doing under the Biden administration. There is no reason for them to use this level of rhetoric. There is no reason for them to fully stop the funding these programs. The only reason they are doing that is for PR purposes, and it is harming our state. It is harming my constituents, and it is creating the kind of chaos and confusion that no one needs in this moment.
Because the administration and many conservative allies of the administration argue that this is still ongoing. There was that conservative influencer who went out and posted this video that went viral alleging that daycare facilities were pocketing public funds.
Yeah, and as you know, he went hours where these businesses were not operating.
Yep, CBS went out and did a joint
again
investigation.
Creates the level of confusion and chaos that is not necessary in a moment when we are trying to deal with a serious problem that needs serious people to be able to address it.
But do you think there was no recorded evidence of fraud according to the CBS investigation that was conducted? But Governor Walz did choose to not run for re-election. He dropped out of the race because of all of this.
Because he wants to focus on defending our state and not defending a seat.
Do you think there has been a sufficient level of accountability and ownership of the failure to have oversight here? Do you think this ends?
That is what we want. We want to collaboratively work with the administration to try to make sure that there is no fraud that's being perpetuated on our state. What we do not want is the level of terror, of confusion, of chaos that is being created without any results in this moment.
Well, there you have it, folks. And I already done came at Tim Walz. You done seen Tim Walz. He's begging for mercy, like straight up. This dude out here looking like he about to cry on national TV. Like, please, please, don't freeze the funds. I gotta feed the kids. People need their money. People need their food stamps. People need their welfare. You got me, okay? That's what you wanted the whole time. You got me. Oh, now it's about the children, right? It's about the free lunch. Where was all this urgency when the money was getting funneled into fraud? So now let me chew her up real quick. Ilhan Omar, right? Because let's just call it what it is. They don't want accountability. That's it. The whole issue with Ilhan Omar and these Democrats start crying on TV, acting outraged about investigations of frozen funds. And what they're really saying is, please don't hold us responsible for anything. That's what it is. They don't want to get called out. They don't want consequences. They don't want to answer for what they already allowed to happen, for the fraud they either turned a blind eye to or straight up benefited from. And they want to be able to say, don't worry, we'll investigate ourselves. But no, imagine robbing a bank and then say, it's cool, I'll handle the internal investigation. I looked into it and I found nothing. That's literally what's happening here. Do y'all really believe Ilhan Omar wants to work with the Trump administration to investigate fraud happening in her own community? Be for real. Of course not. That would mean exposing people she's connected to, people who backed her politically, supported her financially, and propped her up. And this woman's out here taking pictures with known fraudsters, not alleged, not accused, convicted, and she's been smiling next to them from ear to mouth, getting campaign donations from these people. She's had their support, their money, their resources, and now we're supposed to believe she's going to turn around and help bring them down? Nah, she's not mad. She's not mad that the fraud happened. She's mad that it's getting investigated. And that's the game. She's a beneficiary of the system, just like a lot of these politicians. That's why they fight so hard to protect it, even when it's rotten. And that's why 100% I support Donald Trump and the Trump administration is doing, because they freeze the funds, they shut it down, because, again, the only real way to fix it is to cut off the money, stop the bleeding, and then go in there and clean it up and follow the money, most importantly. And that's the only way you're going to find a root issue, because you have to follow the money. It always comes down to the money. But the hard truth is the system is all torn up, it's broken, and I don't even know if it can be fixed the way it is. Honestly, it just need to be getting rid of, erased from top to bottom, bottom to top, and built up from the ground up, revamped. Elon Musk, Doge was right when it comes to the fraud baked into the system. And it's not an accident. It's designed like this. Loopholes where these woke politicians in these states and local legislators create loopholes so fraud can happen to pocket their pockets. I mean, to fill up their pockets, or they enrich themselves so it goes to their pockets, where they either get kickbacks or whatever the case may be. It's all a part of it, right? Woke judges blocking the reform, and you can't just slap a band-aid on that. You got to burn it down and build something that actually works. And will that actually happen? Probably not. And here's why. And this is the part here what makes me sick to my stomach, because too many people depend on the system now, and that's the trap of the welfare state. That's the black pill I had to swallow, right? When it comes to welfare, I've accepted doing the right thing will probably cost you elections, right? Because when you try to fix this mess, when you even talk about reforming welfare, people panic, not just politicians, the people, because so many folks have been conditioned to believe they need the government to survive. And I was one of them. And any threat to that feels like a personal attack. And if you really want to look at it from these government welfare states, from these welfare states, from these government handouts, sanctuary cities, blue states, democratic states, if you look at it, they punish you for actually going out and working, even if you need an extra help or need some food stamps, because you're paycheck to paycheck, but you're still trying to do your best to work and you can show income. 9 times out of 10, you won't even get no food stamps, but they'll give it to somebody that's not even trying to do anything. And that tells you right there everything. And that's the danger. That's why you never let the welfare state get this big in the first place. Once the government becomes people's lifeline, It becomes untouchable. You can't cut it out. You can't reform it. You can't question it, or else you're heartless, racist, evil, or whatever they want to label you that day. And that's why Democrats have no real plan, nothing to offer but welfare dependency. That's the whole platform. Keep people broke, keep people dependent, and then sell them hope every election cycle in exchange for votes. And is powered by manipulation because they be causing the problems. But when it's time for re-election, they act like they give you a solution, but they're the one that created the problem in the first place when it comes to affordability by continue to allow this fraud to happen and at the cost of American taxpayer dollars. And they keep taking money out your check and raising your taxes to have people rely on a government that's not even putting into the system or even working in the government. And when it comes to the government daddy in welfare being our lifeline to where they don't work, they don't try to do anything, and you have government babies, government parents, right? Because the government daddy is taking care of them on the backs of other American taxpayers that's actually working and making an honest living and busting their behinds 40 hours plus hours a week, doing what they could do, honestly going out there to earn every paycheck they get. And the game is simple, right? But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. I'll catch you in the next one. Love you guys. Let the love supersede the hate. Spread that peace, love, and positivity. As always, we just having a conversation. Peace.